Welcome to Rude Awakening, the podcast. We assume that you're here because you've watched our documentary, and we would just love to take the conversation a little further in a weekly format. We will come together, discuss quotes and inspirations from the documentary, and invite you, our followers, into the conversation with us.
I did 5 years of conspiracies, like full in, read everything, and it doesn't matter if they are right or wrong. Of course, they made more sense than the totally brain dead 9 o'clock news. But it was totally kind of, I went totally too deep and found all kind of things, and then everything was conspiracy. And it's at some point you just see that this was my way to introduce some of my fears and some of my feelings and insecurities. But the main point is that in my dream I give my power away, thinking that it's somebody outside.
Hello everybody, my name is Jonathan Cray. I'm here with the lovely Sandra Ruggerman, and we're diving into a quote of Iiro Riihimaki about his time spent in conspiracy land.
It's always a time well spent.
Yes.
And you can go to the fun park or exhibition center.
Yes, it's a great way to keep yourself busy. It was a subject that leads to a lot of hilarity, but I remember a time where I was never that big into it, but I was intrigued. Oh my God, this world is so screwed up, and what if nobody tells me what's really going on, and what is there secret government and Illuminati? Like I think I was too busy with my own awakening in myself to have attention span left for that. But I think that was my only savior. I wanted to really dive in, but I just didn't have the time for it.
Yeah, I dove into a lot of reading in my early awakening years, and I think at some point found stuff to read on aliens, because I always believed, if we're beings of consciousness, why should we be the only beings on Earth?
Which is a very valid question.
Which I even asked
6 trillion stars, that there has to be a planet like ours.
In church at some point, because I was in my youth years, went to a lot of youth camps and everything, and I think at some point I asked somebody, was it the priest or I don't know, somebody, there must be other conscious beings out there. We can't be the only ones, and if God has made us, then why hasn't he made anybody else? But it was, I kind of wonder why I never got an answer on that one.
Why you were sent home immediately.
But that's, then reading a lot about conscious beings and energies and energy beings in the cosmos and dimensions, it then led me to read a lot about other, planetarian conscious beings, and immediately went down that conspiracy path of, they know more than we do. And of course, the human has the tendency to compare it with where we're at. So you would use it with power, of course. There can't be a higher consciousness being that would not want to do you harm. So that was interesting. And I remember reading that probably 20 or 19 years ago, and I remember having one of the worst night's sleep ever after reading something like that. I felt I was sort of invaded by this weird energy that I just put on the nightstand, and it really didn't do me well, and I never went back to it. I think I burned it or something.
Yeah.
Believing in rituals, I'm like, I'm going to burn this shit.
Kill it with fire.
Yeah, and I never put my foot back into it, because it was like, okay, there's so much stuff out there, and I choose. At least I had that knowingness that I don't know what any of this is about, but at least I know that wherever I put my focus, I'm going to amplify that experience, and I didn't want to amplify that experience.
No, I remember. I mean, I didn't really dive into the conspiracy sites, but I did watch a lot of documentaries and films, but especially documentaries about, 9/11 and who did this and who did that and secret governments and I kind of like. I mean, I love the Egyptians. I kind of love the. Almost the mystery. It's almost like an Indiana Jones adventure. I love. Oh my God, could that be true? And but more childish than, oh my God, we're all screwed, and here comes the Illuminati, and here comes the
more like an exploration.
Yeah, I thought it was exciting. And then, of course, when you go a little bit too deep into it, it gets very dark and it gets very righteous. Like there's a lot of people that say, oh, this is 100% true, and.
Well,
and I think I always, exactly. And I was always a little bit wary of absolute truths. I mean, my whole life, and even probably the most spiritual truths that I was allergic to. So, per default, I was also, there was a healthy distance between me and those facts, but which I could have easily just really went for. So it didn't affect me that much. And the moments, like you say, the moments I did dive into some of them, I get this really icky energy. And not so much by because some conspiracies actually turn out to be true. I can't recall which exactly, but,
Must have been the reptilians.
They're definitely true.
Lizard people.
When the 80s television series V came out, I knew it. No, some are true. So I also want to use this episode not to ridicule that part or people believing in it, because it's like any perspective. There's a lot of different perspectives out there, and that's how you get to your own true north. So whether it's religious truths, spiritual truths, or these kind of truths, it doesn't really matter. So I really want to make sure we don't judge it. But
it really depends on the group looking at it. I mean, if the group is big enough, then all of a sudden it's truer than true. Okay, so Jesus could have been a conspiracy.
Well, he was actually killed for conspiring against. So, yeah. Yeah, and you don't say to him hanging on the cross, well, it's not true. It feels true. Mm-hmm. No, so I feel what Iiro's quote, and I find that interesting, is he went all in for 5 years. And I know a couple of other people on the journey that really went in. And actually, what we talked about the previous episode about the procrastination or the perceived detours, or even if you take all of the judgment away, just the exploration.
Yeah.
So you explore wherever you think you need to explore until you're done exploring it. And a lot of people that I speak to have been into that conspiracy, way of exploring, and after a while figured out, okay, it's fun, but it's also very distracting, and like Iiro says, it places me outside of myself. There's a government, there's a this, there's a that, and that it has a tendency to really suck you in.
That when you start on your journey of awakening, that the entry point is saying there has to be more, which means that you're looking into a reality that definitely has so much more to look at. It just depends on what you want to see. And all of a sudden you start seeing traces of things that weren't talked about publicly before. And then you go like, oh, you see, that must be the more that I'm looking for. So I think it's good to not leave a stone unturned, really, initially.
And I also feel it's true in most cases that, and I like to distill things because it just makes it easier for my mind not to get stuck into stuff. But there is power in the world still. There is lobbyists. There is things that people do to make sure their point of view or vision or power position is continued. And you see these things, across the world, like hidden documents about the CIA. You see files that have been hidden that now are coming to light, and you go, shit, half of that was true. And you hear, things are, governments trying to keep things a secret that are now coming out through leaks or. So there is. I mean, I do think we live in a great time where information it's harder to keep secret.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it comes out, like I think the Pentagon just had a leak 2 days ago, which was massive, where all these documents are opened up about them spying on Russia. And it's kind of interesting where everybody's blaming everybody for China has a balloon above our country. Yeah, but everybody's doing the same thing. It's just what can you get away with and what's public perception. So all these things are out there. It's just I like to personally focus on the things that give me energy. That yes, there might be power play, but I try to live my life not in power, or not through that kind of power. So anything around that I put my focus on, it's sort of pointless because I'm trying to live my life without that power. So if I then affiliate myself with a lot of details and a lot of oh my God, this is terrible, I'm right back in it and right back in my own disgust or anger or rage about
and duality, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Because in the end, I mean, where there is conspiracy, there is a good cause on the other side. So
yeah, it's never just for the sake of it. I mean, mostly.
And all of that is valid, like you say. There's just so many different, and I'm not deep enough into any of it that I would be able to say for myself if it resonates or if it doesn't. I'm sure some of it might resonate, but like you say, the focus is on my own journey. Like, what can I do in my self-empowerment, in my very, very intimate, individual, unique experience that doesn't involve an outside force, or at least what's outside, what's inside, right? Because in the end, you could say that I'm making my own reality come alive anyway. So all of this is, even though somebody looks like they're an outside perception in my reality, that's still sort of where I'm putting my focus on, and I'm trying to keep it as close to connection with my soul, with myself, that I don't get lost in that labyrinth or in the maze of potential stuff that could, that I could sort of get lost in, because I got lost far too long. Like, I'm finally in a place where this is where it's happening, so let's stay here. How do you think, how would you advise somebody to not get lost in that?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't.
Good.
Because if you need to dive into that stuff, you need to dive into that stuff. And the same could, other people might say the same to me about spirituality, which I submerged myself, through.
I would say that about spirituality. So.
Yeah, well, here you go. So I've gotten lost. I gotten lost in causes. I gotten lost in truths, gurus, and ideas, which there's no difference between me doing that and conspiracies at all, apart from the fact that I have a more righteous cause on the one hand, and I think, I might have thought in the past, conspiracies are a waste of time. Well, the young generation would probably say the same about me and spirituality.
Yeah.
So I think there's a very clear definition that you take the road you need to take and you explore what you need to explore. So, yeah, I wouldn't give anybody advice. What I find more interesting, and even now, is the whole idea about causes. So some conspiracies get so out of hand, so far out there, that it's easy to laugh at. And for the people that are exploring it, it's a very serious matter. So it's also not right to laugh them out of the room, because basically you're saying your perspective doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Which I think is also not true. You have to explore what you need to explore. And there are other things like that whole case with Epstein, with that whole child porn ring that they ran, and horrible stuff that is real, that I would love the world to get rid of that stuff. And if through exposure people can get a better consciousness of what's right and wrong, even the people participating in this, for sure. It's just you're just watching human life and all its faults, be on the stand, and conspiracy stuff exposes a lot of that stuff, I feel. So I don't think it's that per se, but I feel where it gets lost is diving so deep into the cause of right and wrong and wanting to expose all these things that at a certain point it doesn't feel free. You're not free to explore or to say, hey, I want a better world, so these things need to be exposed. It becomes like this witch hunt, and in that witch hunt a lot of things get said and pretended that actually aren't true. So it becomes a very muddled world where actual facts get muddled with just ideas, which is what we want to believe, and it gets extremely messy.
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of people get completely lost. And you can exchange conspiracies for spirituality. I got extremely lost by, but you have to do this mantra, but this book is the best, and if I don't meditate an hour a day, then I'm an asshole, and et cetera, et cetera. I did the same thing.
Again, breaking it down to something, or simplifying it to the core, right? I think this is about my experience. It's not about any truths or untruths, and even getting that out of the way. Like, there has to be a right and a wrong way. That is something that is so individual, and you can only arrive at that point maybe through having been misled through other truths, or like really going like,
or having lost yourself.
Yeah, and wait a second, like I'm seeing a pattern here. Like whenever I'm really immersing myself into something, like either a conspiracy or whatever, I come to the same thing. Here is somebody who's who wants more power, or who blames others and tries to distract from himself. Ultimately, it's all the same pattern. It doesn't matter like how big it is.
What label you or
it
what
really
cause you put on it. Yeah. And I find it, I'd love to hear your take, but I find it interesting that we're now talking about a quote from Iiro and how he used the time of 5 years. He just really immersed himself into it to basically bring up a lot of his own fears. He said it himself. Like, he through the reflection of a lot of other fear, because there's usually quite a bit of fear around conspiracies of what do the governments do, and we're going to all be toast if we don't do this, is finding out what are my own limitations, what are my own boundaries, and so
where am I giving my power away?
Yeah, to anything.
Yeah.
And you see the same, for instance, in politics. Like, usually the right wing or the extreme right is usually, they're bigots, they're racist, this and that. And there's things, there's remnants of that. But then you look at the extreme left, and they're doing the exact same thing, just on the opposite side of the scale. And that really made me see, oh shit, they're just mirroring each other. But ultimately, they're both getting super lost in what should have been a really, idea to make the world a better place, but then with the same fire and brimstone that religions used to burn women at the stake or annihilate entire species. So it's like the moment, maybe it's the moment it's not free, then the cause kind of loses its legitimacy.
Well, if we all came to a certain understanding of our true selves before starting down the path of creating a religion, a political party, a cause, or whatever, all of those would be informed by a different motivation or a different center. Mm-hmm. Right? Like there would actually be something in the middle of that. And what I'm finding now, whatever the thing may be, there's people attaching themselves to a very strong opinion that have no clue about who they are.
Yeah.
And that's why for me it's becoming a farce, and I can't take it that seriously. For myself, I can respect somebody being deeply immersed into it, and if it feels good for them, then go ahead and please continue.
Or passionate about it.
Don't let me tell you that it's because I don't find it wrong. I'm just finding that true integrity and authenticity for me come from, having something that I can relate to, and that's usually people that are real and authentic and true to themselves. And if I don't sense that, then for me it's like, okay, that's not something I want to spend too much time with. I'm very, like, everybody in my circle knows, don't have a political discussion with Sandra, because I'm just in ignorant bliss. I have no clue about it. I'm not informed. I don't watch the news. That's, you could say it's wrong or right or whatever. And I know that that's very thin ice as well. Like, in a world where it's so important to use your voice, to give it away like that.
Well, where you're not part of.
But even
of
those discussions, I don't even want to be part of that, because it's just, in the end, for me, not my main focus right now. My main focus right now is on kindness, is on sharing from an authentic place, or in true connection with people, and not getting distracted by something that could be subsequential from that.
Yeah, and I feel it's also a difficult discussion, because sometimes causes create awareness and do change things around and do make the planet a better place. But I do agree with you as well. Like, the focus for me is being the standard myself first. Before I tell anybody else what to do, I want to live it. I want to, if nobody else does, at least I can say I'm living my own truth. I'm living my own balance. And
so hold me accountable for this movie, please. Hold me accountable when you know me for the things that I am standing for, right? Absolutely. I'm not saying that I'm not an accountable person. I'm just saying, don't hold me accountable for something that I'm not passionate about and that I'm not choosing to spend a lot of energy on.
Well, and you choose it consciously.
Yeah.
I think that's the big difference. And I choose that consciously because half the time I don't care. And it's not because I don't care what happens to the world. I deeply, because I'm still here.
Well, you're contributing through maybe making this movie, or through other meaningful
things. And I'm deeply invested in making sure that the consciousness on the planet is raised, and that we all are kind to each other, and that we can basically be our best selves, be a version of ourselves that's in balance, that's happy, that's... And then, wars and power games don't really work in that
But I
area.
also think, it's interesting when we say, we want to be the standard for, that's something that we share. We're passionate about consciousness and about sharing that light, or sharing the dark and the light about that. That's why we're making this podcast. That's why we made the documentary. I also really appreciate the people that are dedicated and devoted and passionate about that journey of being a political leader, or being somebody,
change makers in that field.
Absolutely, please. Those people are absolutely necessary. I'm not saying that we should all become Sandras. Please, no. That would be a horrible world to live in. Although, no. It's
like being John Malkovich, being Sandra Ruckerman.
Yeah, I don't need to be it all, do it all, know it all. But I need to be completely solid within who I am with me.
So it's a preference. It's a personal preference to stick with you and not the outside.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I feel that's, for us, I mean, that's a choice I make daily. And I have started watching the news more. And there's some days I can't handle it, but most days I look at it from almost like a bird's eye view, not looking down on people, but almost looking into the energetics of the news. So there's these horrible things are happening, and I see some world leaders, and I can kind of feel the tricks behind it, and you kind of feel the games they play, and especially when it's about Holland, I sometimes get up in arms, or I feel myself have an opinion about it, or these motherfuckers are saying the same thing, right down but I'm free. I catch myself doing it, and I also allow myself to have that opinion, because I do feel strongly about some stuff. But ultimately, for me, it's interesting to watch the broad strokes. Hey, what's happening in Israel right now, in France, what's happening in Russia, it's old power centers falling on their ass, and people thinking and protesting for themselves and saying no fucking more, which is exactly the same that we said on our inner journey, but now you slowly see the world reflecting it. That I find extremely interesting, and that those are the change makers and the cause workers that really, say no, enough.
And I think in order to shine your consciousness on this planet, you need to be part of it, right? And you need to make sure that you are participating in it. You're participating in life. And I think if we can all find the sweet spot of that's how far I can engage without losing myself in it, then that should be the true north. So basically, I'm, like the way that I'm dealing with it is like I can't deal with the details, but I can have the conversation about it that I think, like you say, power is losing its grip. Overall, I believe that this generation coming up now and the one after might not need to witness war on this planet in the way that we have or previous generations have. So I can be part of the conversation. I just don't want to be part of the details. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a choice. And I feel, personally, and we said that in our previous podcast, there's divine timing, and you have to just explore until you don't. So, yeah, get lost. I got lost in spirituality. Please get lost. So I don't think, I think knowing when it's free and not free, and I've said this a million times myself, but in the moment I didn't know. So I can tell myself, well, if you know, then make a change. Well, then I would have. So,
well, up until your best judgment, right? Up until the best.
Yeah, and get lost. I mean, again, choice. I got super immersed in spirituality, and when I then came up again and you're like, what the fuck just happened? Okay, that wasn't so smart. Or that wasn't, that really didn't help me. Or actually that did help me tremendously, because getting lost and confused ultimately led me to, I just want to focus on this and not on that.
So again, while you're immersing yourself, and if you can't help yourself, just keep doing what you're doing, but allow yourself to change. I think that's probably one of the most important things. Allow yourself to change and allow others to change. That's probably one of the things. So, I want everybody to know, don't have a political discussion with Sandra, and allow her to be different tomorrow. And maybe the day after tomorrow, she wants to be a political leader or whatever. I want them to hold me as such a free being, but then I go and look back and go like, oh yeah, but and so is so rigid. So I'm doing the same thing, right? Yeah. Where we always want to sort of hold somebody up to a rock solid position in order to know ourselves and in order to know the lay of the land and feel secure.
Yeah. No, and I think ultimately it's and the same with conspiracy. I can get really up in arms about, the Dutch film industry, for instance. Yeah. And how
which was great. I had no clue.
No, but how the Dutch people are amazing creatives. Like we're represented all over the world for such a small country. And we think so fucking small. Like it's all, oh my God, there's never any money. Let's just make simple projects that either super art house or, whatever the film fund can afford. And I'm like, I'm just steam comes out of my ear, because we're not fulfilling a true potential. It's not about the creatives here. You can tell by my story, I'm getting riled up, but ultimately I know that me becoming this whole, gathering behind this cause, it's just gonna make the rift or the separation bigger.
Yeah, not only that,
because now I'm a know-it-all.
Smaller.
Exactly, and
would you have made a documentary without governmental help or funds or grants or whatever? If you had been immersed in that cause, would you have made this documentary the way that you did?
I couldn't.
No,
I would have started by agitating against it. I would have actually done the same thing. It would have rubbed off on me, and I didn't get any government funding or any funding. We found international. So the reason, Holland was so shit, and my at least my choice not to get caught in that whole discussion, but to say, okay,
be a victim of it.
I've been complaining about this for 30 years.
Are you going to
make your own shit, or are you going to shut the fuck up? And, we proved that with this movie that, my goodness, you can make something as big like this.
Whether you like it or not, the content,
exactly.
Right? That's a different story.
So it's knowing when you get stuck and knowing, I'm going to focus on the positive, on the empowerment side of it.
On living up to your potential. And I think that's a beautiful takeaway. Like, let's not look at the limitations, but let's look at potential. So where am I giving my potential away by standing too firmly in an opinion or in a belief?
Yeah. Yeah, and is it something, because I love this discussion, because I think in a certain way, and we talked about this earlier, AI will get so good, and it's already getting so good, that people are starting to lose the grip between what's real and what's not real. You can synthesize humans almost perfectly digital now. Give it a year and you won't see it. They talk and act, and you're just looking at a digital avatar and don't know it. So what is the only... And the same with conspiracies, like here's story 1, story 2, story 3, and there's documents to back that up, and everybody has, their truths in a way. So how do you know what's real? Yeah, because a documentary said it. How do you really know it's real? Were you there? No, I wasn't. Yeah, but how do you know it's real? And the ultimate answer, and I got to this point, or this answer, is because of what the younger generation are going through with all this information that they need to sift through and need to, could all be fake for all they know. How do you know it's real? Is to feel. Is ultimately whatever they say on the news, whatever your peer group says, whatever your parents say, what do I feel is real? And there's very little facts that you can put to it, really. It's a feeling, it's a trust, because that other thing doesn't give me energy, it contracts me. Oh, that other thing gives me a lot of details, but it makes me feel really shitty afterwards. So that's how you know what this gives me energy, this expands me, this discussion makes me open. It makes my passion flow again, my inspiration. While if I talk with other groups about this subject, it closes me up. It gets me depressed or bitter, so it's just feeling what you feel.
And I think, especially talking about AI and everything that is possible nowadays with technology and even conspiracies, it's just going to get better, because there's just more possibilities with ChatGPT. Like, you could just make up whole new conspiracies and back it up by so much knowledge that you will never be able to debunk. But it gives another great potential more room, which is your potential of self-expression. But that's coming with a lot of self-responsibility. So if I can write essays now through pressing a couple of buttons, that means I'll have a lot more time at my hand to really live up to my own potential and
explore you
and explore me, right? Like, I think only to use it in the lazy way to say like, oh, it will get easier for me. We're already such a convenient humanity now, and so lazy. So do we need more relief in... We don't need to be relieved more. We need to find ourselves more.
Yeah, I agree. And I think like other causes, there always be really big groups that care about the environment, and they should, or people's rights, or and a lot of these conspiracies are debunking a lot of power things in governments. I mean, not everything is a lie. There's a lot of truth in there too. But ultimately, when you strip away the details, what do you feel? What difference can you make today?
Yeah.
So I can make a huge difference by spreading the words that some theory turns out to be true, or I can spend a lot of time living my life in a way that's honest, that's vulnerable, that's exactly what some of these governments or some of these the people in the middle of these conspiracies apparently don't do. Is instead of looking at a faraway country, what's happening, do it yourself, start here. And then
that will give you,
that's contagious.
And that will give you a sense of fulfillment, and it's not going to create another insecurity that will then take care of you praying to another god or, looking at another conspiracy, because it's just out of personal ignorance, not knowing yourself. That's why all of this starts in the first place. Why people try to fill holes within them.
Yeah, and just advocate of the devil. I think also a lot of people, and I do agree, feel it's extremely important to keep doing that and keep exposing lies and exposing untruths and debunking power and making sure that sort of never. So there is like taking care of the planet. There is a purpose to it. There is a purpose of information that needs to be free, or facts that get hidden under the carpet that needs to be exposed. So I think that will always be there as a group of people that strives to make sure that people are telling the truth.
And that's also going to get easier.
Yeah, I believe so. It's just how deep are you going to get lost into it?
In the rabbit hole.
Yeah, with your own truths, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, all in all, nowadays that we have access to so much memes and funny little stories through the internet. Hold it lightly. Just laugh a little bit. Laugh about yourself and laugh at those stories and laugh at the history that got us here. I think, the conspiracies, I still laugh about that sleepless night, like thinking some alien has taken over and... it's like making probes of my brain and consciousness.
No, and again, even if it's all true, every conspiracy is true, then what do you want to focus your attention on?
Exactly.
Because ultimately, that's my opinion, but ultimately, if I expand my own awareness and my consciousness, then that creates a ripple effect, or if more people do it with me, that creates an effect that you can't uphold power anyway, and the truth needs to come out because there's the conscious vibration on the planet is simply too high. So even if you wanted to play out power, it will just almost like explode in your face, which is a far more effective tool than the old. But again, it's something that it isn't that known. It isn't tested in.
No, and it feels counterintuitive as well, right?
It's like you're doing nothing.
Exactly. Which in the end, we're contributing in that regard. So everybody's just doing their job.
Yeah, rather perfectly.
Yes, absolutely. Speaking of rather perfectly, have you seen the documentary yet? If you haven't, dear listener, then you can go over to our website, rudeawakening-film.com, and immerse yourself into the free version. You can also have a deeper dive into the material in the bonus package, which gives you access to over 12 hours of uninterrupted interviews and behind the scenes material. You can also dive deeper into our podcasts episodes that we've done so far. You can find all of those on our website as well. You can find them on YouTube and find us on the social media platforms like Instagram, Facebook, and soon even more active on TikTok and Twitter as well. If there's any questions that you would like to ask us or have feedback or ideas, write us an email at podcast@rudeawakening-film.com. Jonathan, anything else to say? Any other conspiracies for our listeners?
We are definitely not reptilians.
Are you sure?
Just wanted to have...
only a reptilian would say that, though.
Shit.
And we're out.
Enjoy your weekend.
Bye.